Plan Man here, Ryan Faulkner, SetSpaceTriathlon.com. If you're watching this, we're going to do some quick tips talking about target watts per kilogram for race day. So I've had this question from a few athletes. What should my target watts per kilogram be, ideally for race day? And with every other tip, question, answer that I've given, is kind of tough because everybody's unique individuals, and there's not one set. Well, yeah, if you look at this graphic, 2.78 watts per kilogram, if you got that FTP over your weight, as long as you got that ratio at 2.78, man, you're going to be golden on race day. It is important because there's so many different things that factor into it, and we're going to go over tips on what kind of my thought and philosophies are as far as watts per kilogram go, and should you be even using it as a target for race day. So bear with me, let's go through it really quick. Number one, power to weight ratio is FTP divided by your weight in kilograms. If you don't know what FTP is, functional threshold power, then watts per kilogram is going to be an extremely foreign concept to you because you have to get your FTP in order to do that. So number two, knowing your power to weight ratio requires knowing your FTP. So you're going to have to do an FTP test. So if you don't have a power meter, you're not going to be able to find out your watts per kilogram. I mean, you could do it these days with a non-smart trainer in Zwift. It has a way, they have power curves in there. If you select like a Fluid 2 trainer from Cyclops or Ceres, it will calculate your power, and you can do an FTP test on there. And as long as you have a cadence and a speed sensor, it will kind of virtually calculate what your power is. But unfortunately, when you're riding outside, if you don't have a power meter, it's really not going to be very helpful and useful. So if power isn't something you're keeping track of on indoors and outdoor rides and stuff like that, your watts per kilogram may not be the most important thing you need to keep track of. So just keep that in mind. Number three, power to weight ratio can be a useful measurement of how efficiently your body utilizes its mass-produced power. So what you're looking at is your body's ability to produce how many watts for how many kilograms you weigh. So, again, you look at the back of this graphic, you have 2.51 watts per kilogram for 221 watt and for FTP, and 2.78 watts per kilogram for 189 watt FTP. So it's either, are these riders the same weight, or are they variable weight, or what's going on? So if you have somebody that's 170 pounds and one's got a 250 watt FTP and another one's got a 200 watt FTP, obviously it's going to be, all things considered, if everything's the same, your FTP is different, then you're going to have a better watt per kilogram ratio. But you can also affect that with different things. So it's useful, but you have to understand everything that goes into it, and just what can change that denominator of your weight. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later. The weight of your bike does make a difference too. So yeah, you can do it on a trainer indoor and you just look at your own body weight. But when you're out there riding your bike, you're actually carrying around all the weight of the bike. You're pushing that around too, especially going up hills, all the way to nutrition, all the way to your water bottles. So if you're not keeping track of that stuff on race day, it's going to be significantly different, because you're thinking, well, yeah, I'm producing 200 watts and this is my target watts per kilogram. But you also got like 2 to 3 pounds of water and like a pound or so of food running around, gels and snack bars, and the weight of your bike. Maybe use different race wheels for race day, or just different things. So keep that in mind. It is good, useful measurement, but take it with a grain of salt. Number four, have a consistent way to measure the power. So I talked about that. Either, if you're doing, a smart trainer, or you're using a non-smart trainer, you're using a power profile like Zwift or some other program, just be consistent, because if you go from outdoor to indoor, keep in mind that there's going to be probably a significant power difference, probably 5 to 10 watts, of difference, 5 to 10% difference of your indoor trainer versus power pedals versus crank arm power meters versus a hub power meter, or whatever way your power meter is being measured in outdoors. Make sure that that there's either a 5 or whatever watt difference, that if you're doing your easy ride on your trainer, or you're doing an FTP test on your trainer and you go outside and do it, there's probably going to be a little bit of a difference between the power meter readings. So when you're outdoors, you're like, I'm just not, my watts per kilogram just aren't getting there, but I'm feeling okay. If your way you're measuring power is not consistent between how you're getting your FTP test and then you're going out and riding in the real world, it's going to cause you a little bit of confusion, a little bit of frustration. So got to be consistent on how you're measuring the power. Number five, larger riders tend to be more powerful than smaller cyclists in absolute terms, but this kind of levels it out, because that smaller cyclist may be able to produce enough FTP, watts per kilogram, that they actually do better than the heavy cyclists, going up the hills, but when you got more weight going down the hills, they may fly past you. So just keep that in mind, that absolute larger riders usually have more power, but when you're going up hills, that's when the watts per kilogram kind of come playing more of a bigger factor. Number 6, only in long and steep climbs does power to weight become most important variable. So looking at the Ironman world, 70.3 world, a lot of courses, there's some courses that have a lot of climbing on it, and then there's courses like Ironman Florida that has very little climbing. So over time, that watts per kilogram may be useful, but may not be as important, and may not be the most important variable of what you're looking at when you're doing your race. It may be more about your target FTP over time, and not necessarily worrying about your watts per kilogram during your training. Because another thing is, our weight kind of fluctuates. I can shift 5 pounds in one day, just depending on water weight at the end of the day and how much food I've had at the end of the day. So, whichever weight you're using, are you using the weight in the morning? Then your watts per kilogram can look great. You're using your weight in the evening, and it's like, that's kind of depressing. So you just got to be careful of how you're measuring that and where you're measuring it and when you're using it. So the long steep climbs, that becomes a lot more important, but on the backside and the downhills, a little less important. Number 7, focus on the course you're racing for target watts per kilogram. So there's so many factors, like I mentioned, with race courses. You go from one to the other, and no two race courses are the same. Do you have a race course with a lot of turns in it? Ironman Waco had a few turns in there. So, if you're stopping and starting, slowing down and that kind of thing, it's just hard to say, well, if you hit 2.5 watts per kilogram that entire race, you're spot on. But the problem is when you slow down going into the turns, your watts per kilogram goes down. You start off in, trying to get your speed back up, your watts per kilogram will spike through the roof. So it's kind of hard, and weather plays a factor. If it's hot and humid, your FTP is probably going to be a little bit lower than normal. It's going to be harder to get to that. It's going to be more uncomfortable to get to that target watts per kilogram if that's what you're going by. So make sure that you're understanding the variables in the course and how it affects your watts per kilogram, your FTP overall. Number 8, having target could lead to overtraining or injury. So if you've got this watts per kilogram of 2.0, and for whatever reason you're kind of stuck on your FTP and you're not getting the training that you need, and you're not structuring your training to increase your FTP, and your weight's staying the same, it can get frustrating. You're out there trying to kill yourself on your bike ride. Or conversely, if your FTP is going up, but your weight's going up because you're either putting on muscle mass maybe, or, for whatever reason you gained a little bit of weight, or you're overly obsessing about losing weight and you're not feeding yourself enough, you're not getting yourself enough nutrition or hydration, and you end up undernourishing yourself, and then you cause problems in your body that could lead to long-term problems. So just keep that in mind, that having that target, if it's ingrained in your brain and that's what you got to do, I'm going to get 2.0, come hell or high water, it could lead to injury over time. So that's kind of why I'm not as big a proponent of a watts per kilogram target. So keep that in mind. Overtraining or injury, let's avoid that. Number 9, recommend athletes focus on hitting workouts assessments and focus on making gains. That's where structured planning comes in. I like to keep track of stuff. I'm a data guy, so I do like FTP tests for my athletes, and I like tracking the information over time. I do like number 10, watts per kilogram is smart to keep track as long as you're doing your FTP test. If you're doing an FTP test, put in your weight, and it's good information to have, because your FTP could go up over time, but then if you're gaining weight too, it kind of counteracts each other, especially if you got a little bit of climbing on the bike course. So it's a good thing to say, hey, maybe I need to polish up my nutrition just a little bit, maybe a few less donuts in the morning or something like that, or, maybe tone it back on the splurge day or something like that. Maybe don't have ice cream every night after dinner. Maybe move up the eating time so your body has time to digest that food and work it off a little bit better. Change some small little habits, not go back and say, okay, we're going to limit 1,000 calories a day. I'm losing this weight no matter what. That's when you start getting into catabolizing muscle and doing some very detrimental things to your body. So you got to be careful about not going overboard. It's a good ratio to have. It's a good important data point to have. If you're getting your FTP tests and you're doing those anyway, it's good to keep that information and track it over time just to see what's going on. But do not get wrapped around it. Don't get totally sucked in and have to have that target goal FTP over kilograms or watts per kilogram over time. Don't get ingrained on having to have that and then causing that problem later down the road when you're training improperly or when you're malnourishing yourself. We don't want to get to that point. So that's why I'm not as big a proponent. It's good to have good data to track, but over time, it's kind of in the periphery. It's not something that's like dead center of my training plans and my athletes. So hope this kind of helps you out. If you're kind of looking at that watts per kilogram, you're like, oh, should I be keeping track of this? Keep track of it, but don't make it your end all be all. Have a good plan, follow the plan, and focus on eating well and keeping properly nourished and hydrated, and you should be in a good spot no matter what. So that, I'll wrap up this video. If you got any questions, put them in the comments. Facebook, YouTube, comments. Give it a like on Facebook. Give it a like on thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notifications button. See future videos. Like I said, put them in the comments. I get notifications. I'll go back and answer any questions I got. If you think I should add in something there, put that in too. Hopefully this helps you out. Wrap up this video. Happy training, and we'll see you out on the race course.